Hello everybody, I'm Ingrid, the custom quilter, and this is my first video. Y'all forgive me, I know it's gonna be rough. I wanted to share how I prepare for a pixel quilt and some of the tips and stuff I've learned along the way. I have done 3 and I'm working on the last one, and I've gotten a lot of questions, so I thought I'd make a video to help everybody out and hopefully I do a good enough job where you learn something. All right, first off, fabric prep. I do wash and starch all my fabrics, and usually I pick the pattern with 14 fabrics. Dee has shut down the website right now because she's finalizing everything, but I will put a link to her Instagram where you can go and follow her and you'll know when she's up live again. I wash and starch, as I said. I use this starch, and I use Stay Flow when I can find it, the liquid kind. I like everything pretty stiff, and I like them to be able to stack up like cards. You can kind of hear it helps with accuracy. If you don't like washing and starching, then don't. But these are small pieces, and this is an experienced person quilt. And you already know that the smaller the pieces, the more important accuracy is. So after starching, I cut very accurately if I can. I use this poor man's Stripology ruler. It's called Shape Cut. I think it's like $15 or something like that at Walmart. And it works really well because you're gonna be cutting a lot. All right, so then I make myself a lot of labels beforehand. I usually do it in Excel or something, or I write a few down if I don't feel like doing that. And I put in the letter of the color, the actual color, the size, and how many pieces there are. Hopefully you can see that. These 1.5 by 1.5 pieces, those are the things that you cut the most. And I put those in a little snack bag. And then the other pieces that don't have as many, I just throw in a gallon bag, all the same color. Everything that's the same color in one bag. And I keep it like that. If you have enough room, you're fortunate enough to have enough room where you can keep all the pieces out around you and you can just grab what you need, that is the best thing. But I don't want to give up table space. I have 3 tables in here, plus a little bit of space on my sewing machine, but I don't want to give up that space. So what I do is I made these design boards, and they are just batting, leftover Amazon boxes, and duct tape. I just wrapped the batting. I think I cut 15 inches or so and made these a little over 12. Just wrap it around to the back, duct tape, and your pieces stay on and don't want to move around. Once you've done all that work to get them on the board in the right places, you don't want them to get messed up. So I used these and I made 9. The pattern has on each page 9 blocks, and each page is a row. So I set up one row and then I come and sew all 9, and then when all of my boards are empty, then I spread out everything around me on the floor in the living room and put 9 more together. 9 is a good 3-4 hours worth of sewing. On my first quilt, it took me about 35 minutes per block, depending on how many pieces were in the block. So setting up the board, after you get the pieces around you, the pattern does not tell you what size each piece is. This is hard to explain, but you need to watch Dee's video. Each 1.5 by 1.5 piece is a pixel. So if you see a piece that takes up 2 of those spaces, that's a 2.5 inch piece by however many pixels the other way. I cannot explain it. Watch the video and trust me, by the end of the first square, you will know exactly what size each one of these pieces is without the pattern having to tell you. Just trust me on it. You pick up the color and the size and you put it down exactly like the pattern tells you on your design boards. Once I get them on the design board, then I don't know if I'm the only one that does this, but I glue base my pieces. So I've already done it on here, but pretend I did. So if I've got this set up the way it's supposed to be, I'll take my glue and the pieces that are next to each other on the pattern, I just put a line or dot in the seam allowance and glue those pieces together. If I'm gonna do a whole stack at one time, then I don't bother to iron. But if I'm gonna do this block right after I glue it, I just take my hot iron, 2 seconds, 1, 2. That's enough to hold it together, and that really helps with accuracy. And go to the machine, sew it, put it back on here, and then you're off to the next piece. The good thing about these is you can iron on them without having them burn up. And after you've sewn a piece, there are thousands of seams in this quilt. You really don't want to press open because I think it will make your quilt weak since there are so many seams. So how do you decide which way to press? Because the pattern's not going to tell you. What I do is I have back here on my design board the last block that I've done. And I can just look up here and see which way I pressed on the last one and do the opposite on the next one. What I generally do is on the first one, and sometimes I make a note on here, like all of these horizontal seams going this way, I will press up on this one, down on this one. And then I decide this first line is going to go to the right, the next one's going to go to the left, and so on and so forth. You can't avoid your seams getting thick in some areas, so just don't sweat it. I mean, it's not that complicated. Nobody's gonna be in the middle of your quilt looking at your seams, and it really doesn't make a whole lot of difference. Just, do the best you can, and if you come up on a thick seam, you can always snip it and fold it the other way. Most people that are trying to do this are experienced quilters, so you know already. I would not say this is a beginner quilt, but I don't want to discourage anybody. It's just all straight line sewing. Dee has done her best with the program to not have any Y seams, but I have come across a few, but they were all in the testing phase and they were working to eliminate those. But I mean, if you come across one, it's not a big deal to get that done. Please do not make this a quick quilt. This is not a quick quilt. It's something you want to take your time with. Pick a subject that you really love. My first one was my daughter, then my granddaughter, and then my mother who's passed away. And the subject will get you through, Dee says, and it is true, because she also says by the time you get halfway through, you're losing the will to live if you pick something that bores you. So pick a subject that you really love. There's not a whole lot that I can say about seams or anything like that. Most of you know that kind of stuff. The most important thing is to be accurate in your cutting and accurate in your sewing. Test your 1/4 inch seam before you start. I also recommend stay stitching the outsides, blocks that are going to be on the outsides, because those seams may come apart. I don't back stitch on every seam, but seams that will be on the outside of the quilt, I do try to remember to back stitch those, and then I stay stitch when I'm done with the complete quilt. Quilting design, anything you would put on a regular quilt, you can put on these. I don't know about hand quilting. That's a lot of seams to hand quilt, but any design works. You wouldn't think that it would, but I've seen a lot of quilts that Dee's done, and she's put whatever she want on them. My 3, I put the same design on my 3, and it's called Smoking, and it's kind of a meander type, and it doesn't interrupt the image at all. Something else on storage. A lady that asked me questions, she had little containers where she put all of the same color in one container, and she was able to keep it out. I think that's a really good idea. These bags work for me, but after a while they kind of get on my nerves, but not enough to make me stop. So something else that will help you is a 8.5 inch ruler or a 6.5 inch ruler, depending on what pattern you choose. The medium patterns, they have 6.5 by 6.5 inch blocks, and each one of the increments of the pieces is 1/4. I messed up so much fabric because I'm not used to cutting 1 1/4 or 6 1/4 or 5 1/4, whatever it is. And I like the bigger quilts, and they're 1/2 inch increments. It doesn't seem like it would make that much of a difference, but it really does. So the fabric requirements are in the pattern, and it's generous, and there are diagrams in the back of the pattern to cut by. I don't use them. I cut them myself. I didn't print them, but I always buy a little bit extra because I think I'm cutting 2.5 and I'm cutting 2. Or I cut the wrong fabric, the wrong size, or I sewed something and messed it up and I need another piece. When you're cutting, I always do a few extra pieces of each size and just leave them in the bags for if I mess up, then I have extras and I don't have to pull out that fabric again and cut it again. You're gonna need several of these blades. I use the endurance blade, so I usually go maybe 2 because they last a really long time. But the regular ones, you might need 3 or 4. That's a lot of cutting involved. I keep a lint roller handy and 2.5-inch rulers. These 2 8.5-inch. Got several rulers laying around me, and also keep this weight to put on top of this to keep it from moving while I cut. I think that's all I have for today. This is not a tutorial. This is a tip video. So if you have any questions, leave them for me in the comments and I will answer them for you. Thank you. Bye.